Hello everyone, welcome back to Spanish Hut. Today we are going to discuss body parts. In our last video, we discussed our alphabets in Spanish and hopefully you all know that. So let's begin body parts. The first one is head. We pronounce it as cabia. Next one is forehead. We pronounce it as frente. Hair. We pronounce it as cabello. Brain, we pronounce it as cerebro. Eye, we called it as ojo. The next one is eyebrow, we call it as ceja. The next one is eyelash, we pronounce it as pestana. Next one is ear, we call it as ido. Next one is nose, we pronounce it as nariz. Next is cheek, we pronounce it as mejilla. Next one is lips, we pronounce it as labios. The next one is teeth, we call it as dientes. Next one is tongue, we call it as lingua. Next one is chin, we call it as menthan. Next one is face, we call it as cara. Next one is mouth, we call it as boca. Next is jaw, we call it as mandibula. Next one is neck, we call it as cuello. Next one is throat, we pronounce it as garganta. Next one is shoulder, we call it as hombro. Next one is chest, we call it as pecho. Next one is heart, we call it as corazon. Next is liver, we call it as hígado. Next one is lung, we call it as pulmón. Next one is kidney, we pronounce it as riñón. Next one is stomach, we pronounce it as estómago. Next one is belly, we called it vientre. Next one is waist, we call it as cintura. Next one is arm, we call it as brazo. Next is forearm, we call it as antebrazo. Next one is elbow, we call it as codo. Next one is wrist, we call it as muñeca. Next one is hand, we call it as mano. Next one is finger, we call it as dedo. Next one is nail, we call it as una. Next is thumb, we call it as pulgar. Next one is back body, we call it as espalda. Next is spine, we call it vertebra. Next is hip, we call it cadera. Next one is calf, we call it ternero. Next is thigh, we call it as muslo. Next one is knee, we called it as rodilla. Next is lower leg, we called it pierna. Next one is foot, we call it as pie. Next is toe, we call it as dedo de pie. Next is ankle, we call it tobillo. Next is heel, we call it tacón. And our last word for today's video is sole of the foot. We pronounce it as planta de pie. So yeah, here's all about today's video. Hopefully now you understand body parts in Spanish language, and in our next video we are going to discuss some terms related to body and some useful phrases. So yeah, this is all about today. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe Spanish Hut. Thank you. Have a nice day.